I was standing in my apartment, still in my work clothes, holding my phone against the counter while my bank app refreshed for the third time. $2,000 sent, like every month. Same date, same account, same message from my mother afterward. Your father had another episode. Thank you for helping us, sweetheart. I stared at it longer than I should have, because something about it felt automatic. Not the message itself, but the way my body reacted to it. Like I wasn't surprised anymore. Like I had trained myself not to question it. In the next room, my fiancé Mark was talking about wedding venues on speakerphone with someone. I should have been listening. Instead, I was thinking about my father's heart. Again, always my father's heart. And how it had somehow been sick for 6 straight years without ever getting worse or better, just stable enough to always need me. To curiosity LOOPS, soft contradictions begin, I opened my messages with my mother. There it was again. Doctor says the medication costs went up this month, but there were never receipts, never names, never hospital details I could independently verify without being brushed off. Once, I asked for the clinic's billing department. My mother replied, "Don't stress yourself, we'll handle it. Your job is already hard enough." Another time, I offered to fly in and help. My father said, "It's nothing you need to see in person, Hannah. Trust us." Trust. That word started to feel less like love and more like instruction. But I still never stopped the payments. Because guilt doesn't need proof to function. It only needs fear. And I was terrified of being the daughter who hesitated when her father was sick. If you're listening to this, I want you to think about something for a second. Have you ever supported someone for so long that you stopped asking whether the story still made sense? Because that's what I was doing. And the strangest part, nobody around me ever questioned it either. Not Mark, not my coworkers, not even me. Before I move further, I want to know, where are you listening from tonight? Drop our local time and city in the comments. Hit like and subscribe so you can come back if you enjoy emotional yet rational stories about family betrayal, justice, and calm revenge. My name is Hannah Collins. I'm 31. I live in Seattle. I work in corporate finance. Nothing glamorous, just structured systems, spreadsheets, forecasts, and numbers that don't lie unless someone tells them to. I built my life carefully. Small apartment downtown. Stable job. A fiancé who made me feel safe in a quiet way. Mark wasn't dramatic. He didn't push or pry. He liked routines, schedules, and planning things months in advance, which is probably why we worked. My life looked normal from the outside. Even good. Weekday dinners, weekend wedding planning, occasional calls with my parents that always ended with the same topic, my father's health. The first time it happened, I was 25. My mother called me late at night. "Hannah," she said, voice tight, "your father's been diagnosed with a heart condition. We didn't want to worry you." I remember sitting on my kitchen floor after that call, just staring at nothing, because it felt like the ground under me had quietly shifted. I asked what I could do. My mother hesitated for half a second too long. Then she said, "Help us if you can, that's all we need." So I did. $2,000 a month. At first it felt temporary. Then it became expected. Then it became part of my identity. The daughter who pays. The daughter who doesn't let things fall apart. And over time, nobody even reminded me anymore. It just happened. There were small moments I didn't fully register at first. Like when I once asked to speak to my father's doctor directly. My mother laughed softly. "Oh, doctors are so busy, sweetheart. You don't want to bother them." Or when I tried to visit unexpectedly. My father sounded almost startled. "Oh, no, not a good idea right now. You just stress yourself out seeing all this." Another time, I sent extra money after a procedure update. My mother replied within minutes, "You're such a blessing to this family." But never once did she describe what the procedure actually was. Not in detail, not even vaguely consistent medical language, just emotion, gratitude, urgency, and silence everywhere else. Still, I never paused the payments, because stopping would mean asking a question I wasn't ready to answer. What if I've been wrong for years? 6 escalation engine, life continues, but tension builds underneath. My relationship with Mark moved forward steadily. We were engaged for almost a year before the wedding planning became real. He once asked me casually, "Do your parents need help financially long-term? We should plan around that." I remember hesitating just a little too long. Then I said, "My dad's sick, it's ongoing." Mark nodded like that was enough. And that was the end of it. No follow-up questions, no digging, just acceptance. That's what made it feel normal. Everyone accepted the story too easily. At work, I still performed fine. Deadlines, reports, reviews. No one knew that every month, like clockwork, part of my salary disappeared before I could even mentally assign it to anything else. It wasn't even painful anymore. It was automatic, like breathing. But sometimes, late at night, I'd open my banking app and just look at the pattern. 2,000, 2,000, 2,000, 6 years of it, 72 months, and I would feel something small tug inside me, not suspicion yet. Just wait, like a question forming without words. If my father is really sick, why there is no recovery or betterment or even escalation? It's the same pattern my mother would say. He just had an episode. He can't really keep up, so don't bring up his illness while you talk to him. Be careful not to overwhelm him. Then I immediately pushed these thoughts away, because thinking it too long felt dangerous. Like I was stepping toward something I wouldn't be able to step back from. Instead, I focused on the wedding. Venue lists, guest confirmations, dress fittings, normal things, safe things, but the money kept leaving. And nobody ever changed the amount. Not once. Not when I got promoted. Not when my salary increased. Not when I offered more. Just 2,000. Always 2,000. Like the number itself was part of a contract I never read. The first real crack didn't come from my parents. It came from a mistake. I was reviewing my yearly finances for tax prep when I noticed something strange. A pattern in the transfers. Not just outgoing money, but timing. Every month, within a day of my payment, there was a second movement. Not from me, but from the receiving side. Redirected, split, distributed. At first, I assumed it was hospital billing. But then I noticed something else. One recurring account appeared more frequently than the others. Same pattern, same destination, and it wasn't a medical institution. It was an individual account, registered under my twin brother's name, Daniel. I remember staring at that line for a long time, not reacting, not immediately panicking, just processing, because Daniel wasn't sick, at least not that I knew of. He lived in another city, worked, spoke to me occasionally. Nothing about him suggested dependency. So why would money meant for my father's health be routing there? I closed the laptop, told myself I was misunderstanding something, and went back to wedding planning. Because sometimes the brain chooses peace over truth, even when the truth is already visible. I didn't stop the payments, but I started saving statements. Every month, quietly, without telling anyone. Just in case I ever needed clarity. I told myself it was just organization, but something deeper was happening. I wasn't trusting the system anymore. I just wasn't ready to confront it. And that tension, between knowing and avoiding, would sit inside me for weeks, until the wedding morning, when avoidance finally stopped being an option. The morning of my wedding, I woke up before everyone else. Mark was still asleep. The house was quiet. My dress hung near the window like something waiting to be worn into a different version of myself. I sat on the bed and did something I had never done before. I opened every bank statement, all 6 years, all 72 months, and I started tracing every single dollar, line by line. That's when I saw it clearly, not just inconsistency, not just misdirection, but structure, a system. And at the center of it was not my father, not my mother, but a pattern of control I had never been allowed to see. I remember my hands going still, not shaking, just still, because something inside me finally understood this wasn't a mistake I had been funding. It was an arrangement I had been sustaining. And today, I was getting married into a life that was still connected to it. I looked at my reflection in the dark screen of my phone, and for the first time in 6 years, I didn't feel like the daughter sending money. I felt like the variable someone had quietly been depending on. I was still sitting on the edge of the bed when the second realization hit me harder than the first. Not that the money was misdirected. Not even that Daniel's account kept appearing in the flow. It was something simpler, something worse. None of this had ever been emergency-based. There were no spikes in medical spending, No unpredictable hospital surges, no real-world chaos. It was perfectly steady, like rent, like a subscription, every month, for 6 years. And the scariest part? The system never needed to explain itself twice, because I never asked. I stood up and walked to the window. Outside, my wedding day was already happening without me. Cars arriving, decorators adjusting flowers, people laughing in polite bursts. A perfectly normal morning. But my mind wasn't there anymore. It was inside the pattern. Why Daniel? Why not a hospital? Why never invoices? Why always vague urgency but never medical detail? And the biggest question of all, why did I feel like I was the only person in the family who actually believed the story? Because if it had been real, someone else would have broken down too. But nobody ever did. Not once. My phone buzzed, a message from my mother. "Don't forget to stay calm today, your father is emotional." I stared at it. Then another message came immediately after. "We've done so much for this day. Don't create stress." That wording stuck with me. We've done so much. Not you're getting married, not we're happy for you, but we've done so much. I looked at the wedding dress again. Mark knocked on the door softly. "Hannah, everyone's asking if you're ready." Mark was the only one who looked like calm in all of chaos. I smiled at him. "Yes," I said. He came closer and said softly, "I am so happy today." I nodded. "Can't wait to be a husband, huh?" He chuckled. "Absolutely." I didn't tell him anything. I closed my phone. I was ready, just not for what they thought. At the venue, everything looked perfect. White flowers, soft lighting. Guests arriving in waves of polite excitement. My father greeted people like a healthy man with no visible burden. My mother moved through the room like everything had been planned by her personally. And Daniel looked relaxed. Too relaxed for someone whose existence I was starting to suspect was partially funded by me. He came up to me before the ceremony. "Hey," he said casually, "you look stressed." I smiled automatically. "I'm fine." He studied me for half a second too long, then nodded. "Good, don't overthink today." That sentence hit differently than it should have, because it wasn't comfort, it was instruction. During the pre-ceremony waiting time, I started doing something I couldn't stop. I began mentally reconstructing every interaction with my family. Every time I asked a question, every time I was redirected, every time I was emotionally softened out of curiosity, and I started noticing something chilling. They never lied with details. They lied with avoidance. No specific hospital names, no consistent medical language, no third-party validation, just emotional urgency and trust reinforcement. My father, "Don't worry, I'm managing." My mother, "We don't want to burden you." Daniel, "It's not a big deal." 3 voices, same structure. I found my mother near the side hallway just outside the main reception space. She was adjusting her earrings, watching guests arrive like everything was under control. For a second, I just stood there. Then I said her name. "Mom." She turned immediately, smiling. That wedding day smile people use when they're managing too many things at once. "There you are," she said softly. "You look nervous, don't be." I hesitated. Not because I didn't know what to say, but because I was watching her face too closely now. "I need to ask you something," I said. Her smile flickered, just for a second. "Hannah, not now, please." "Today is—" "No," I interrupted, quieter than I expected. "Just tell me the truth about something." That made her pause, her hand lowered from her earrings. "What is this about?" she asked, still calm, but tighter now. I saw the transfers. Silence. Not dramatic, not immediate denial, just silence that lasted a fraction too long. Then she exhaled through her nose like she was trying to reset the moment. "Oh," she said carefully. "That," my stomach tightened. "That," I repeated. She looked past me briefly, toward the hall, toward people, toward timing, then back at me. "Hannah, listen to me," she said softly. "Your brother needed help for a period of time." That's all it was. My voice dropped. 6 years is not a period of time, Mom." Her jaw tightened. "He was struggling," she said more firmly now. "You don't understand everything that was happening." "I don't understand because nobody told me anything," I said. That hit something. I saw it in her face. A flicker of irritation, then control returning. "You are getting married in less than an hour," she said, voice sharpening slightly. This is not the time to dig into old financial things. I stared at her. Old financial things, I repeated. She sighed. Your father was sick. Your brother needed support. We managed it as a family. We didn't share so you won't be upset. That's not what I saw, I said quietly. Now she stopped fully. Excuse me, my voice stayed calm. I saw where the money went. A beat. Then she straightened. Her tone changed, less soft now, more structured. Hannah, she said carefully, you are tired and emotional today. Don't think too much. That word. Imagining. Something in me went still. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't push harder. I just watched her. And she added quickly, almost too quickly, we'll talk after the wedding. Right now, you need to focus on your future. Then she touched my arm again, hugged me, smiled again, back into performance. Okay. But I didn't answer, because I had just seen something important. She wasn't confused. She wasn't surprised. She was managing the conversation. And that meant she already knew exactly what I had seen. I was observing. And observation changes everything. Because once you see structure instead of story, you stop needing reassurance. You start needing proof. I went into the small bridal room alone, locked the door, opened my banking app again. This time I didn't scroll casually. I mapped it. All transactions, all 6 years. Then I did something I should have done earlier. I exported everything and cross-referenced it with shared household timelines I remembered. That's when the structure revealed itself fully. The payments weren't random. They aligned with. Daniel's relocation dates, his apartment lease cycles gaps in his employment history, and recurring family emergencies that always overlapped with his financial needs. My breath slowed. Not because I was overwhelmed, but because everything suddenly aligned too cleanly. This wasn't chaos, it was coordination. This was never about my father. And for the first time that morning, I didn't feel like I was guessing. I felt like I was confirming something that had already been true for years. I just sat there, holding the phone, letting the structure sit in my mind without resistance. The emotional part of me still wanted answers, but the logical part had already started planning. Not revenge, not confrontation, just sequencing, a knock on the door. Hannah, it's time. My mother's voice outside, soft, controlled, familiar in a way that suddenly felt rehearsed. I stood up slowly, put my phone down, looked at myself in the mirror. White dress, perfect hair, calm expression. But inside, something irreversible had already shifted. I wasn't walking into my wedding. I was walking into a room where every lie in my family had decided to sit down and act normal. I opened the door. The music started, and I stepped forward. People stood. Music rose. Everything looked the same as it had an hour ago. But now I wasn't inside it. I was observing it. My mother sat in the front row again. Perfect posture, perfect expression. But now I knew something she didn't know I knew. She had just lied to my face without hesitation. As I reached the altar, Mark smiled at me, soft, reassuring. I thought you got lost, he whispered. I smiled back. I'm here. But my eyes drifted again to my family. Mark whispered. Everything okay, love? I had to compose myself because no matter what, it was our wedding day, our special day. I looked at Mark, who looked concerned now. I didn't want to stress him, so I smiled back cheerfully. Yes, husband, just a wedding day stress. His laugh was spontaneous. I am with you, love. Don't worry. His reassurance calmed me down, but I had realized I was not dealing with misunderstandings anymore. The officiant began speaking. Words about unity, trust, shared life. I listened carefully this time. Mark squeezed my hand slightly during the vows. I said my vows, my voice steady, almost too steady. People clapped, smiled, cameras flashed. But inside me, something else was happening. Back at my seat, I felt my phone vibrate again. Another message from my mother. Don't let your imagination ruin your day. I looked at it for a long time. She was studying me. Very time I tried to get closer to the truth, they redirected me emotionally. Not logically, emotionally, which meant they weren't hiding money. They were managing perception. I didn't confront anyone again. I didn't react. I didn't interrupt the ceremony. Instead, I started doing something new, fragments replaying in my mind. The wedding wasn't the end of something. It was the last place they assumed I would ever question anything. That assumption was about to fail. As the officiant pronounced us married, applause filled the room. We stood up for the reception. Music, laughter, servers moving between tables, guests taking photos. I sat beside Mark through dinner, smiling when people stopped by the table, thanking relatives for coming, posing for pictures. But I couldn't stop watching my family. My mother kept checking on me. My father laughed with guests. Daniel drifted from group to group, and every time our eyes met, he looked away first. That was new. Halfway through dinner, Mark leaned toward me. "Okay," he said quietly. "What's going on?" I looked at him. "What do you mean?" "Hannah," his tone was gentle. "You haven't been present all day." I stared at my plate for a moment, then back at him. "How much would it bother you if I told you this wasn't the day I thought it was going to be?" His expression changed immediately. Not alarm, concern. "That depends. I found something this morning." "About what?" "My family." He stayed silent, waiting, giving me room. I appreciated that. "I need to handle it myself first." Mark studied me for several seconds, then nodded. "Okay." No pressure, no interrogation, just trust. He held my hand gently, and suddenly I realized how different that felt from every conversation I'd had with my parents lately. About 20 minutes later, Daniel approached my table, congratulated us. "Can we talk?" There it was, the conversation he'd clearly been expecting all day. I stood. "Sure." We walked outside. The evening air was cool. For a few seconds, neither of us spoke. Then Daniel shoved his hands into his pockets. "What exactly did you find?" I looked directly at him. "Enough," he exhaled. Then he nodded. "Okay," I waited. "Hannah, it's not what you think," I laughed softly. "Nobody says that when things are good." He looked away. "You know Dad's condition was real." "Was." His eyes shifted back to me. I continued. "Was, not is. And yet Mom kept saying, 'Don't talk about it to your dad, he gets anxious.'" He didn't answer, which was answer enough. "How long?" I asked. Daniel rubbed the back of his neck. "A few years." "A few years what?" "A few years since he actually needed the money." I closed my eyes briefly. There it was, the first direct admission. When I opened them again, Daniel was staring at the ground. "Then why did it keep going?" He didn't answer immediately, because he knew there was no good answer. Finally, he said, "Things got complicated." Such a harmless word for 6 years of deception. "Try explaining." Daniel leaned against the railing. "I lost money." "How much?" "A lot." "How much?" His jaw tightened, almost 200,000. For a moment, I thought I'd misheard him. "What?" "There was a startup." I stared. "It failed." "Then there was another investment." "That failed too." Of course it did. I suddenly remembered dozens of conversations over the years. Daniel always had plans, ideas, projects, big opportunities, the thing after that. Meanwhile, I worked, saved, budgeted, built. "You lost $200,000. And Mom and Dad decided to make me pay for it." "Hannah, no." My voice stayed calm, too calm. "They made that decision without asking me. They were trying to help." I stared at him. The sentence actually sounded absurd. "They lied about Dad's health." "They didn't completely lie. They used it." He couldn't argue. A real diagnosis had become a permanent excuse, an open account, and every month I'd paid it. Then Daniel said something that hurt more than everything else. "You were doing well." "What?" "You were successful." He looked genuinely confused by my reaction. "As far as Mom and Dad were concerned, you could afford it." "So you all lied." "That does not give you the right, Daniel. As if my hard work had somehow converted my income into community property. As if being responsible meant surrendering ownership. As if success eliminated consent. I finally asked, "Did you ever intend to tell me?" Daniel's silence lasted too long, and that was my answer. "No, never." A few minutes later, I walked back into the reception alone. My parents hadn't stolen from me because they hated me. They stole from me because they believed they were entitled to me. My money. Money. By the time the toast portion of the reception arrived, I wasn't angry anymore. That surprised me. I felt calm, not because what they did was small, because it was finally clear. And clarity has a strange way of quieting emotions. The DJ tapped the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen, if we could have your attention for a moment, we're going to begin our speeches." Applause moved through the room. People settled back into their seats. Wine glasses were lifted. Phones appeared. My mother smiled proudly from her table. My father adjusted his jacket. Daniel stared into his drink. And Mark looked at me with a growing sense that something unusual was about to happen. The DJ smiled. "First up, our beautiful bride." More applause. I stood, picked up my glass, and walked toward the microphone. The room gradually quieted. Almost 200 people. Friends, relatives, coworkers, neighbors. People who thought they were about to hear a wedding speech. I smiled. "Thank you all for being here." A few guests nodded. I took a slow breath. I spent a long time thinking about what I wanted to say tonight. My mother's smile widened. She relaxed further into her chair, still believing this was normal, still believing the script was intact. "I thought I would talk about love." Soft laughter. A few people raised their glasses. "I thought I would talk about family." My father nodded. Then I continued. "But this morning I learned something about family that changed the speech." The room became slightly quieter, not uncomfortable yet, just attentive. I glanced down at my phone, then back up. "I learned that for the last 6 years, I've been sending my parents $2,000 every month." A few guests chuckled politely, assuming there was a joke coming. There wasn't. "I sent that money because I believed it was helping pay for my father's heart condition." The room went still, not silent, still. My mother's smile disappeared. Immediately, I continued before anyone could interrupt. Over 6 years, that amounted to approximately $144,000. People exchanged glances. I could feel the atmosphere changing. My father shifted in his chair. Daniel stopped looking at his drink. Now he was looking directly at me. I looked back, then continued. "This morning, while reviewing finances before my wedding, I discovered that a large portion of that money wasn't being used for medical expenses." No one moved. No one spoke. Even the servers had paused. "I discovered it was being redirected." My mother's face had gone pale. My father looked like he wanted to stand, but he didn't, because he knew standing would only draw attention. And attention was the last thing they wanted. I looked at the guests, then back at my family. My twin brother Daniel received substantial support from those funds. A collective ripple moved through the room, not loud, but unmistakable. The sound people make when they suddenly realize they're witnessing something real. Daniel closed his eyes briefly. My mother finally stood. "Hannah," I raised a hand, not aggressively, just enough. "Please let me finish." The room became silent again, because nobody knew what was happening, but everyone knew they shouldn't interrupt. I looked down at my phone. "I asked questions over the years." I scrolled. "Hospital information." Another scroll. "Doctor information." Another. "Treatment details." I lifted my eyes. Every question was redirected. My mother's expression hardened. Not guilty, defensive. That surprised me. Even now, she seemed more upset about the exposure than the deception. "I was told to trust." I paused. "And I did." The words landed harder than I expected, because they weren't dramatic. They were true. Then my father stood. "Hannah, this is not the time." I looked at him. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then I asked a question loud enough for everyone to hear. "When were you going to tell me your medical expenses stopped years ago?" The room froze. Completely, my father's face changed. Just slightly, but enough. Enough for everyone to understand that he couldn't answer. And silence is sometimes the loudest answer available. My mother stepped forward. "We did what we thought was best." There it was, the justification, not denial, not confusion, justification. I nodded slowly. "You decided what was best for me." "Hannah, you decided what was best for my income." My voice never rose. That made it worse. People were listening now with absolute attention, because calm truth is difficult to dismiss. My mother crossed her arms. "Your brother needed help." I nodded. "I understand helping family." Then I looked around the room. What I don't understand is why helping family required lying to another family member for 6 years. No answer. My father looked down. My mother looked angry. Daniel looked ashamed. And suddenly every guest in that room understood exactly what had happened. Maybe not every detail, but enough. Enough to reconstruct the truth. Then Daniel stood. And for a second I thought he was going to defend himself. Instead, he surprised everyone, including me. He looked directly at the crowd, then at me, and said, "She's telling the truth." The room became even quieter. I knew where the money came from. His voice cracked slightly. I told myself I'd pay it back eventually. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. I kept thinking I'd fix everything first. He laughed once, bitterly, but eventually became 6 years. For the first time all evening, I saw genuine regret. Not enough to erase anything, but enough to be real. My mother immediately turned toward him. "Daniel." "No, Mom." He shook his head. "No," she looked stunned. Because for the first time, someone wasn't protecting the story. Daniel looked exhausted. "I should have told her." Then he looked at me. "I should have stopped it." I didn't answer, because some apologies arrive years too late. The room remained silent, waiting, expecting something dramatic, a fight, an explosion, a public collapse, but that wasn't what I wanted, so I lifted my glass again and smiled sadly. I didn't share this tonight to embarrass anyone. That was true. I shared it because secrets survive in silence. Nobody interrupted. Nobody argued. I spent 6 years believing I was helping save my father. I looked at my parents. And today I learned I was actually funding a decision that should have required my consent. The distinction mattered. A lot. Then I said the only thing that truly needed to be said. "Starting today, the payments end." Simple, clear, final, no negotiation, no discussion, no emotional appeal, just a boundary. The first real boundary I'd ever created with my family. For several seconds, nobody moved. Then Mark stood beside me, without being asked, without making a speech. He simply placed a hand on my back and remained there. That small gesture meant more than anything else that happened that evening, because it wasn't control, it wasn't obligation, it was support, and support feels very different from ownership. The reception continued, awkwardly at first. Then gradually people returned to conversations, but the atmosphere never fully recovered. And honestly, it wasn't supposed to. Truth changes rooms, that's what truth does. My parents left early. My mother barely spoke to me. My father looked older than he had that morning. Daniel approached me once before leaving. "I'm sorry." I believed he meant it. I just wasn't ready to do anything with that yet, so I nodded and let him walk away. I never sent another payment. Not once. The first month felt strange. The second felt uncomfortable. By the third, I realized something important. The guilt had never belonged to me. It had been assigned to me. My relationship with my parents became distant. Polite, careful. They hated boundaries at first, then eventually accepted them because they no longer had a choice. Daniel spent years paying off his own mistakes. As far as I know, he's doing better now, not secretly supported, not protected, responsible, for the first time in a long time. Mark and I built our life slowly, peacefully, without hidden transfers, without emotional invoices disguised as love. And every now and then I think about that wedding day, not with anger, not even with sadness, but with clarity. Because that was the day I finally understood something. Being dependable is a wonderful quality, until people start confusing it with permission. For years, my family believed my reliability belonged to them. It didn't. It never did. If you've listened this far, tell me, who do you think was most responsible? The parents who created the lie? The brother who benefited from it? Or the entire family system that treated one daughter's success like a shared resource? If you were in my position, would you have exposed the truth at the wedding? Or would you have waited? Don't forget to hit like and subscribe for more. Thanks for watching, folks.